Shalom. Welcome to part 3 on the talks of the moon phase cycle. Now, this section is on the new or renewed moon. And the biggest problem we have is the meaning of the term new moon. Is it actually new, a new moon, or is it actually a renewed moon? Or better still, a restored moon? The word normally translated as moon or month is Strong's H 2320, and it's Kodesh. This is from the root verb kadash, and it means to renew, to rebuild, to make something like new through repair, restoration or replacement. It can also mean new as something which is renewed by replacing or restoration. It can also mean moon as the moon is restored each and every moon phase cycle. From the dark moon it starts to receive its light and builds to a full moon in the waxing stage. Then after the full moon, in its waning stage, it loses its light until it becomes a dark moon again, which is the one that can't be seen. So the new moon can never actually be a new moon, for it's never actually replaced. Only its light is renewed each and every cycle. There's another Hebrew word which means month, and that is yerah, which is strong as H3391. This denotes a period of time, a full cycle of a moon, going from full moon through the waning to dark, then through the waxing to full again. And going through Strong's Concordance, I find this is the word. This is the word that is normally used if the whole moon cycle is meant. That's the 29.5 days. That is after the first 5 books of the Torah. Also, I have gone through the Strong's Concordance, and for the most part, when the translation of moon or month is in the text, the word renewed or restored moon is equally as valid in the translation, and I would say even more valid in about 90% of the cases. In this modern world, the new moon is regarded as a dark moon, and we look on our calendars, you see a little picture of a black circle, a black disc, and that represents what is called a new moon, or that is the moon in conjunction. And that is when the moon is in direct alignment between the earth and the sun. And this is what happens in a solar eclipse. And actually, when you think about it, it's only when a full solar eclipse happens that the dark moon can be seen. So if this is the new or the renewed moon from which the sign of the feast days is to be taken, then how will we ever truly know when it is to start unless it's an eclipse? I mean, how can we see a sign which cannot be seen in the night sky? It's impossible. And Judaism and the majority of the Messianic movement following it base all their feast days on the conjunction being the new or the renewed moon. Well, think about it, how can it be a renewed moon? So from this point on, I will call the conjunction the new moon and the full moon the renewed or the restored moon, and we'll do that for clarity. So basing the feast on the conjunction or the new moon is fraught with problems. The first being you can't actually see it, and this way they try to get over the problem by going to the first observed sliver of light after the conjunction. But this is at least 12 hours after the conjunction and can never be truly pinpointed without mathematical calculations. And that would be okay in this modern day of an age with computers and all, but what about King Daud, living 1,000 years ago? He didn't have a computer. And talking about King Daud, when he was on the run from Shaul and in hiding along with Jonathan, he was alerted to the fact that the next day would be the restored moon. See 1 Shemuel 25 and verse 18. That's chapter 20 verse 5 and verse 18. Now when there is a full moon at dawn, when there's a full moon, the dawn of the following day is a festival. Starting at dawn of the following day is a festival unto Yahuweh, and is classed as the first day of the renewed moon. So we can see it is easily discernible. When we use the full moon as a sign in the night sky, we can easily discern what day it is. Also, there is something called a blue moon. And that happens when you get 2 consecutive full moons over 2 nights. And it is this which is spoken of in 1 Shemuel chapter 20 verse 27, and verse 24 to 26 tell us that as the king sat down on the festival of the renewed moon or restored moon, which occurred he sat with his dignitaries and invited guests, David's seat was empty. And verse 27 takes it up, and it says, "And it came to be on account of tomorrow, the 2nd day of the restored moon, David's place was empty. And Shaul he said unto Jonathan his son, Why has not the son of Yishai yesterday or today come unto the mill?" Now this is a celebration over 2 days, this one, and that's as near as an exact translation as I can get, and it certainly says there was a festival meal over 2 days. So this must be referring to a blue moon where you've got 2 consecutive full moons or 2 consecutive restored moons. Yes, I know it's only an implication, but it makes sense, and I think it's a correct implication. And if this is this is also further evidence that what the people consider the new moon should in fact be the restored moon, the full moon. Now there's another strong piece of evidence from the renewed covenant that the full moon is a sign for the counting of the days of the moon cycle, and that is the actual Passover when Messiah was killed. And Matthew 27 verse 45 states, "And from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour." And Luke 23:45 states, "And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the dwelling place was torn in 2. Now, these 2 verses describe 2 events just before or as the Messiah was dying. One being the tearing of the veil, which separated the most set apart where the mercy seat was, and where I believe the Father sat and literally watched his son die as a redemption price for us, for him to open a doorway for our salvation. The second event, and the most significant for this study, is the darkening of the sky. And in Luke it tells us that the sun itself was darkened. There is also a prophecy in Amos which deals with the end of Yisrael being all of Jacob, and that end I see starting with the death and resurrection of the Messiah. And Amos 8:9 tells us, "And it shall be in that day, declares Master Yahuwah, that I shall cause the sun to go down at noon, and shall darken the earth on the day of brightness." So I am seeing the events of verses in Matthew and Luke described as a fulfillment of the Amos prophecy. Now, so it says in Amos that he, Yahuwah, will cause the sun to go down at noon. Now, and I think the miracle there is not so much the eclipse, but how long the eclipse lasted. I'll explain that in a second. Now, the only logical event which can cause the sun to darken on a clear sky, on a bright sky, is a solar eclipse, which is a total eclipse of the sun by the moon. Excuse me. Now, the solar eclipse event is caused when the moon's orbit about the Earth, as it is positioned between the sun and the Earth on the day of the dark moon at its conjunction phase. This conjunction, or the conjunction phase, is fixed and always occurs on the 15th day after the new or restored full moon. And several times a year the dark moon also appears on the 14th day. The 14th day of the first renewed moon is also preparation day for Passover, which was to occur in the evening directly following the preparation, which is still the 14th day of Aviv. Now, normally a solar eclipse only lasts for a few minutes before it starts coming away again from the sun, and the sun starts shining again. But this event here, and this is where I think the miracle happens, and I think this is what Father actually caused. I don't believe he caused the eclipse, but he did cause it to remain covering the sun for 3 whole hours. That only the hand of the great Yahuwah could cause to happen. But an eclipse doesn't last for 3 hours. Now, and I think it's that 3 hours that Amos fulfills the Amos prophecy. It's a miraculous event. But if the conjunction, thinking about this, if the conjunction happened at the time of the death of Messiah, then it stands to reason that the conjunction must have happened on this occasion 14 days after a full moon, or the restored moon of Aviv, exactly as prescribed by the Torah, not a day earlier or a day later. Therefore, 14 days earlier must have been a full restored moon. And therefore, the full moon, or better still, let's call it the restored moon, must be the moon from which all counts are made for all feast times, all assembly times, for all time. And another quick point to bring out here, and it's not a paper on the Passover, but it's an interesting note. If Messiah died in the daylight hours on the 14th of Aviv at the correct time for the Passover sacrifice, then the previous night that he ate with the Talmudim could not have been a Passover. Because he would have ate the meal. The Passover meal is meant to be eaten after the lamb is sacrificed. That is the evening following the daylight hours of the 14th of Aviv. If he had died the previous evening before the sacrifice is killed, how can he eat a Passover lamb before it dies? He can't. It's impossible. Yes, they had a meal together, absolutely, and it was what we call a Last Supper, or whatever term we want to say on it. Yes, absolutely. But it wasn't a Passover supper. Now, if he had celebrated a Passover supper before the correct time for the Passover sacrifice, then it implies that he would have gone against the Torah instructions. If he died at the wrong time, again it goes against the Torah instructions. He missed the mark. He missed the time, the opportunity. And that in Torah is called sinning. And therefore, if that would be the case, he would have been disqualified as a perfect Lamb of Yahuwah, and the consequence of that is, well, redemption for no one. No one, if that was the case, no one could ever or would ever be saved. Everyone would be forever doomed. But that's why Messiah died on Passover, the Passover day, at the correct time. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 19 verse 15 tells us that one witness does not rise up against a man concerning the crookedness or sin that he against any man concerning the crookedness or sin that he commits. At the mouth of 2 witnesses, or at the mouth of 3 witnesses, a matter is established. I say we have our 2 witnesses. The first being the luminaries, the sun and the moon, are given for signs. A body has to be illuminated, shining, for it to be an illumination. And the full illumination of the moon in the night sky makes perfect sense, and that is the first witness. The second witness is a conjunction, the eclipse at the death of the Messiah on the 14th day of the renewed moon of Aviv, which means 14 days earlier must have been the full moon, the restored moon, or the fully illuminated moon. So we have our 2 witnesses. The matter is established according to the rulings of Yahuwah. The matter is so. But having a 3rd witness is even better, and establishes the matter in stone, so to speak. And we come to that 3rd witness at Psalm 81:3, and it reads, "You blow at the renewed moon, or you blow at the restored moon, Kodesh, the shofar at the full moon, in regards to our festival day." Okay, the first thing to establish here is what festival day is this talking about. Now, there is only one festival day where the shofar is sounded, and that is on the day of Yom Teruah, or the Day of Trumpets. This day is on the first day of the 7th renewed or restored moon of the year, and can be found in Leviticus chapter 23 verse 24. And the second word of great importance is the word keseh. Now, this word for this context can be taken one of two ways. The first being one of concealment, something being covered and concealed by something else, and the other can be covered as in something being covered by something else. Or it could mean both. At the conjunction moon, is the moon concealed or covered? Some will say it's covered in darkness, but I say no, not at all. And for proof of this, all we need to do is look at an eclipse. At an eclipse, the moon is not covered at all. The sun is. The sun is covered by the moon. The natural state, the natural condition of the moon is dark. And that darkness is fully revealed at the eclipse, when we can see it. It is not a case where the moon's light is covered by darkness, not at all, no, because the moon has no natural light. It is more a case where the moon's covering of light is taken away to reveal the darkness of the moon. And only a full moon is a moon fully covered with light, which in fact hides the darkness, its natural state. Now, isn't that a picture of us? In our natural state, isn't it one of darkness? And there's no light in us at all. There's nothing in us whatsoever. We walk in darkness, we breathe in darkness, we have our being in darkness. But when we're born from above, when we're born from the spirit of Yahuwah, our set apart and cleansing spirit, our spiritual mother, whose name is wisdom, she covers us. She covers us in her garments of wonderful light. So when Father looks upon us, he sees her garments and not our natural darkness. And the full moon is a picture of that. It's covered. We don't see the natural darkness of the moon. We see the covering of light. And when Messiah comes again, he'll see us being covered with the Spirit. He'll see her garments of light covering us, and not our natural state of darkness. So the word keseh in this verse is telling us that the moon is covered and in a sense concealed, because its natural state is concealed. The moon is covered with garments of light which comes from the sun, and the darkness is concealed from our view, just like our sin is concealed from the view of the Father. So in this case, the Hebrew word keseh does in fact mean both. The moon is covered and concealed, absolutely, but it's covered in light at the same time. That is, the darkness is concealed by the light covering it. Therefore, the correct translation of this verse is full moon. Also, we need to take note that there is no conjugation before the word keseh, which will then make the text, you blow the shofar at the restored moon and at the full moon. Now, I've heard the rabbis and those within the traditions of Judaism say that, oh no, people miss out the conjunction there. There's two different things. The new moon, which they say is rather than restored or renewed moon. The restored moon, the new moon, is different from the full moon. But in the original text there is no conjunction. It doesn't say you blow the shofar at the new moon and at the full moon. It says you blow the shofar at the restored moon, at the full moon. They're the same thing. And so when they say this, they're actually lying. They're trying to deceive you. Now, let's look at the word labana to finish this out with, for extra proof of the full moon. Now, remember, in labana means to be white, In this case it's a white moon, that is the full moon. Now Isaiah 24 verse 23 reads, and the full moon, Labana, will be in total confusion. That's Kephara, and it means to be in a state of confusion, have feelings of anxiety, distress, shame, disgrace, in a state of low esteem and honour, but in the perfect conjugation, noting the totality of the action. So it will be in a state of total confusion, and the sun will be totally ashamed, bush. It means genitals, shame, ashamed, shame as one who is dried up. The feeling of shame when the genitals are exposed, and it's conjugated perfect, denoting again the totality and completeness of the action. For indeed, Yahuwah of heaven's hosts, he will actually and completely reign on Mount Zion, and his abundant honour, glorious splendour and majesty shall be in front of his elders. Right, so this is very interesting here. Apart from the fact of the use of the full moon, that it is the white moon, the thing is that white moon will be in total confusion. Now, the moon cannot get confused. The other meanings of to be ashamed cannot be ashamed. A moon itself cannot be ashamed, so it's got to be talking here metaphorically. And I think what's being pointed out here is quite simply that the understanding of the moon, or which phase of the moon we should use, will be in total confusion. And it is today. There's total confusion out there on what moon phase we should use for the setting of the feast. It's a state that was here predicted to happen in the last days. This whole passage is about the last days, about the Messiah returning. I mean, some people calculate the conjunction, some the first sliver. People like me, we're convinced it's a full moon. So there's confusion out there. It's a state of total confusion. But with the help of the Spirit and the words of Yahuwah, that confusion will be resolved. And it will, and has been shown from just a small amount I've studied so far, that the full moon is the correct moon phase by which we must set the times of the assembly meetings. Okay, Yeshayahu, Isaiah chapter 30 verse 6, it reads, and it will completely come to pass that the light, which is or, of the full moon, Lebana, will be as the light of the sun. Again, this is just about the returning Messiah. Now, again, this confirms that Lebana is referring to a full moon. It's white, and it's talking about the light that it gives off. The light will be as the light of the sun. So it's going to be a lot brighter than it is in this day and age. But why is it that the full moon is mentioned in these passages? I mean, again, these two passages are about the reign of the Messiah. Why is the full moon so important to be mentioned if the conjunction of the first sliver is the most important? Why is that not mentioned? The full moon must hold significance. Now, that is so far my evidence that I found. I am 100% convinced that the moon for setting the feast is the full moon. It's the easiest one to see, it's the easiest one to find out, and hence it is the one we are to set the times of the feast by. And with all this evidence, I cannot see how people can still accept any moon phase other than the full bright moon, the fully illuminated luminary in the sky, the restored illuminated luminary in the sky for the setting of the 7 called out assembly meetings. But as usual, most people will follow their own thinking, their own understanding, or the understandings of and traditions of rabbis and other religious leaders, and they will do so over and above the written words of the Creator Yahuwah. But that is their choice. I will err on the side of the words of Yahuwah, and not of the words of men and traditions. I do hope and pray so very, very much that these words help and bless all who hear them. And may Father's face shine upon you and bring you all understanding and peace. Shalom. Shalom.